welcome to Kica's Corner. My name is Kica Matos, and I am your host. On this show, we talk about our community, our city, and the world, but always, we always do it through a social justice lens. Let's get started. And behind me, by the way, is my princess. Her name is Logan. She is taking her afternoon nap. Our topic today is arts and culture in New Haven. We're going to take a look at the scene in our city, what relationship, if any, there is between arts, culture, and social justice, and what one particular leader in our community is doing in all of these spaces. I'm happy to have as our guest today, Shelley Quiala, who is the executive director of the Festival of Arts and Ideas in New Haven, formerly known as the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. Let me say a little bit about Shelley before we get started. She's been in New Haven now for 2 years and 1 month. Before relocating or before moving to New Haven, Shelley was Vice President of Programming, Education, and Community Engagement at the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts in St. Paul, Minnesota. At the Ordway, Shelley led a team that programmed and produced concerts, dance, and educational programming that reached more than 150,000 people annually. Ella habla español. She's fluent in Spanish, and because of this, she also worked on major initiatives in bilingual programming, and she guided extensive community engagement that centered on the narratives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Before her work at the Ordway, Shelley worked at the Teatro del Pueblo, which is a Latine theater company in St. Paul, Minnesota. Shelley, welcome to the show. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Gracias. It's wonderful to be here with you, Kica. Thank you.
And for those of you who are listening and watching, we might fall into a little bit of Spanglish, so you are in for some fun. So Shelley, tell us what compelled you to move to New Haven.
You know, I was looking for, I've been in arts and cultural leadership in St. Paul, really to activate my desire to drive this connection between and be a part of this movement of social justice in the arts. That's why I got into this work. And so I was looking for an opportunity to lead an organization, as I felt at the time when I was in St. Paul, I had kind of gotten to the point where I felt like I'd activated the change I could from the position I was in. And I wanted to activate in a different way and to be changed myself. And someone actually mentioned this festival, this opportunity to me, this leadership opportunity. And when I saw the combination of the community and the richness that was here, and the festival and its history, and it's like what it wanted to be and what it was seeking to be, but hadn't maybe quite gotten to yet in terms of its evolution. And and then just the opportunity that having a festival as a platform for work provided, I was like, this is it. I gotta be there.
Had you heard much about New Haven before that?
No, I know the East Coast in pockets, but I didn't know the depths of what New Haven was and kind of its significance and importance. The first time I got here, do you mind if I just dive into stuff and you can like stop me?
Go for it.
Okay.
This is a conversation, so go for it.
Thank you. I moved into a building and my office is right near the Amistad statue. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna look, what's this about? And I already have a connection to Cuba from my family, right? Like I was married to someone who was born and raised in Cuba. I have familia en Cuba todavía. I have family on the island that will always be my family. And I realized that I had come to a city that had this very strong connection through that narrative, and then to the Caribbean as a whole, through its people. And I was like, wow, it felt like it was meant to be. And so I didn't know a lot beforehand, but I've really enjoyed getting to know not just the history, but also the people, the folks that call this space home. And
I know that you are always everywhere in every community, in every significant event. You are certainly somebody who has made it her business to get to know the city, not just the big obvious places, but the communities in particular.
Yeah. I don't know how to lead any other way. I mean, I can't imagine doing the work that I do as, an arts and cultural, and it's like servant leadership, right? Like I say leadership, but that's not like I'm on top and everyone else is. It's like you're a steward, like I think of myself as a steward of resources. And so if my job is to steward resources and affect change for the majority of the people who need it the most in the city that I'm going to live in, then I better get to know all the nooks and crannies, and especially the places where, it's not as brochure flashy and shiny. Because I think that's critical. It's mission critical to any arts and cultural leader, but especially the way I want to work.
Now, you came to New Haven during a really critical and challenging moment. If I'm not mistaken, it was 3 months after the murder of George Floyd, and a few months after the beginning of the pandemic. I'm curious to know how these two really earth-shattering events impacted your outlook about the festival and your own response, right? Here are two big globally devastating issues. You're coming into a new space. How did that affect you? And how did you respond to both things?
You're seeing my eyes tear up a little bit. George Floyd was murdered 10 minutes from where I lived in the Twin Cities. My ex-husband worked with him at the Latin nightclubs where he worked. It was profound to go through that in a moment when I already knew I was already on my way to New Haven with my family, and to be that close to that kind of trauma, that affected so many people. I mean, and it was for months. And it still is something that's being reconciled. It was hard to leave, like it was both hard to leave, and also it was a moment when I reminded myself that, like, this is not just work in St. Paul or in Minneapolis. Like, this is work everywhere. Racial justice, because I've traveled internationally. I know, like, colorism exists everywhere. Anti-Blackness exists everywhere. Like, these are things to fight and undo. We have to decolonize everywhere. And so it gave me the opportunity, because I was in transition, I think, to lean into that and say, it's not about being in the right place. It's about being with the right heart, and just trusting, that your vocation or what you're called to do is, that the journey that you're on will take you to the place that you're supposed to be, not because you're any kind of special, but just because that's how it's lining up right now. And I've definitely felt that power. But in terms of so that's how, like, I personally made that journey over. In terms of, like, how it affected the way that I took the opportunity to not rush to try to do things, and instead to utilize and leverage some of the festival's resources to invest in things that were already happening here, and to show up in spaces that I knew I needed to kind of learn more about before I could be effective in doing the work of leading a festival in this city. So there was a blessing to it, I think, because even though things were shut down more, the demands on my time were less. And so, I mean, I think one of the moments, Kica, that you and I spent time together, I volunteered to door knock in the Fairhaven neighborhood to get information out and schedule vaccines. And I was like, hey, cool, I speak Spanish. I can, like, get to know Fairhaven. I can use my Spanish. I had a ball just, like, getting to know folks in Fairhaven. And I think that partly the COVID and the moment that we were in gave me personally, stepping into a leadership role, space to do that in a way that might not have been so easy to say yes to those, even though I would have wanted to, if the world had been moving in the way it is when there's not a pandemic.
The next question that I want to ask you is somewhat related to what you just said, but I want to pivot specifically to talk about the Festival of Arts and Ideas as an institution. I believe it's now in its 20s, 27 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Its mission, as stated today, is to quote unquote create an internationally renowned festival in New Haven of the highest quality, with world-class artists, thinkers, and leaders, attracting and engaging a broad and diverse audience, celebrating and building community, and advancing economic development. I would love for you to share with us your own vision of what this means and how you have brought this to life since you became executive director.
A great question. So I knew that I really wanted to interrogate the word international, because I have a background in festival as well. At the Ordway, we had an international, it was called the International Children's Festival for many years. And so I went to convenings that were for that community in a performing arts space. And it was very colonial. It was very, Eurocentric. Historically, it was about art from Europe, art from Canada, art from Australia, and not Aboriginal Australia, but like white Australia and maybe Argentina. And so, this is how international, I knew it, not just from New Haven, but like that's how it was articulated in festivals around the US and Canada. And so I was really interested in taking that word and have been asking since I started, what does that mean to us? When we say international, what are we saying? And really trying to say, you know what, we are, international is Black, international is Native, international, like we are, there are folks here that have connections, that live in New Haven, have lived in New Haven for generations, that are connected to the globe through their bloodlines and their cultural histories. And that is, and so I wanted to intentionally kind of push on that word, but also change its meaning so that when we say international, often you say global and then people think, oh, Black and brown, that's global. International is white. Like it's really weird. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in unpacking that and really getting us all to look at that word and saying, what is it that we're talking about when we say this? And why is it so hard for, folks in performing arts, traditional performing arts kind of spaces that are white led why is it hard for them to see that hypocrisy is really the right word? I mean, it's a hypocrisy to say international and not really mean it. So that's how I experience international, and I think quality is fraught too. I mean, that's something else that I really wanted to interrogate and say in the same circle of this conversation around what quality means when you're talking about art from different cultural value bases. The way that your values are imbued in your art, right? And so, how can you possibly have quality that's uniform that you can use to judge different cultural aesthetics from a singular lens? It's impossible. And I think that really puts folks up quite a bit. So these words are coded words. They're coded racist words, actually, is what they are. Quality is a coded racist word, and so is international. And so I'm interested in kind of making that visible and then saying we're not going to do that anymore and figuring out how to activate in a different way, whether it's with those words with a different meaning or with different words. But I wanted to start with, here's how I've experienced these historically in artistic circles.
Which brings me to this point, which is under your leadership, I can speak to this, and I can also say that anecdotally, this is the word on the street, and that's the reputation of the festival has changed in the last 2 years since you've been here. As you know, because I know you've been in a lot of spaces where you have listened. But there have been long-standing criticisms for a long time that the festival has largely catered to a wealthy white audience, with little beyond tokenism directed towards communities of color. That really has changed, and I credit you as a change agent, somebody who's transformed the festival and made it more inclusive, more welcoming, and more diverse. And I'm wondering if you can bring this to life by giving us specific examples? You just laid out your own vision and your own analysis of global versus international, and of the importance of having a diverse array of programming and arts from which to draw. But talk to us about how you've actually tackled this and what you have done to transform the festival from what it was 2 years ago to what it is today.
Thank you. In community is the short answer, not by myself. And I think that's one of the first things I learned when I started activating my ideals of anti-racism and social justice in the Twin Cities was this is not like you have to kind of quickly get over your own ego, should you have one, and understand that it's movement work. It's not savior work. And so the first thing that I actually had the joy to be able to do was to bring in new members of a team. And that was part of where the festival was, is the folks that had been in leadership roles either had already left or were planning to retire, and really kind of gifted me with a lot of space. So I'm grateful for that space. And said, this is your leadership. You have an opportunity now to change who is in different positions. And so I think that I started with programming because I like who is curating and selecting programming. As conscious as I can be as a white woman, I'm not Afro-Latina, I'm not Black, I'm not, Native. And so there's a sensibility that I lack because I haven't lived in those bodies. And I think it's really important to bring in folks that have thought about curation from within that perspective, have thought about it in a reflective way, and then just really surround and support those leaders, those curatorial leaders, in ways that they can articulate their voices, and that's how it becomes authentic and non-token. I think is my job is less curation and more facilitation. And so changing the staff and who's on the staff and giving the staff the space to be creative in ways that, to say hair art is art, for example. That's one of the first things that Malachi Eason did as the director of programming, is he had this vision that he wanted to expand the way that art was defined in the festival. And the festival's been doing this, but it's been doing it mostly in like European traditional ways. So through puppetry, and which is valid, and also missing something. So Malachi said, you know what, where I come from, like hair art shows are a big thing. Let's do a hair art show on the green. Let's do a fashion show and really highlight androgynous fashion as this articulation of self for Black and Brown designers. And so we did that last year. And I think that I never would have come up with that because I haven't lived it, and so who's in power, who's making decisions, and how they're supported and applauded and cheered for, and I think is really, really important. And I spend a lot of energy, yes, showing up, and also like really supporting intentionally with love and joy my neighbors, because I think that's my privilege as a white woman, is I don't have to carry as much of the pain of racism in my body every day. So then I'm going to use my energy to like lift folks up that do have to carry that pain, because that's one of the ways I can activate my allyship, both as an employee in this organization and as a community member.
How would you describe the festival's relationship with the New Haven community writ large today?
Oh gosh, it's so funny. Like I didn't know the festival very well before I got here. So people are like, things are so different. I don't know. I'm just doing what I think we're supposed to do. So, it feels strong. I feel love when I go out, and I love in return. Like I love and I feel loved, and that feels really good. And I think that when I first got here, I felt a little skepticism from folks, like, who's this white lady coming in from Minnesota, and what's she going to be all about? And like, yay, I knew that was going to happen.
I was one of those for sure. Moment of honesty. Yes, I was one of those people.
Good. I mean, like, and frankly, I would be too if I lived. I would have the same questions. And so, so I spent. That's why I spent time. I love spending time in community, and also I knew it was really important in order to build trust to show up as myself and just be ready for people thinking that I was, going to be a certain way. And then either folks will change their minds or not, and that's fine too. Like that, like depersonalizing the reaction to me is also part of how I think you activate social justice work from as a white person. Like, it can't be about me. It's not about me. It's about what I do.
Yeah, I do remember when we first met that at some point in time you switched. Nosotros empezamos a hablar en español. And I was stunned that I was looking at this
Una gringa, por favor, dile lo que es,
this,
¿no, verdad? Es una gringa.
this white woman with light eyes speaking Spanish with a hardcore Cuban accent, and I was blown away. And I think that was part of your real embrace of a different culture and the fluidity and the accent. I think in particular was something that moved me immediately. You're listening to Kica's Corner on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio, broadcast at 103.5 FM and live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about our democracy, which is increasingly under attack. And we are losing many of the rights that we fought so hard for and thought were permanent rights. The most recent being the Supreme Court ruling in Dobbs, which ended the federal right to abortion. Do you think there's a unique role that arts and cultural institutions should be playing at this particular juncture? And if so, what are your ideas about the specific roles that they can play?
Great question. Yes, yes, there is a role that arts and culture should play. I think that arts experiences get at soul and heart and humanity in a way that sometimes just words can't. They can to a certain degree, but not always. And I love satire. I love comedy. I love things that kind of hit me in a way that they maybe snuck in and then got me to think about something a little differently. I think we have to be really smart about the work that we are presenting and its intent, and interrogate our own lens through which we are experiencing it and what we want it to do. And it should, in my perspective, it should always humanize. If the art is not seeking to more fully advance the understanding of humanity, that especially people who are not seen as fully human through the media or through laws, like folks that are in cages on the border, like what a great topic to be able to say, to put art in front of someone and say, like, these are human beings and what we are doing is inhumane. And I think that holding up that mirror is what we can do as creators. And I think also it fortifies us. Art can fortify us. And I was in a bomba. I've been in a few bombas with you, Kica. And I always feel that I've been fortified after I go through a bomba experience, and just the power of that communal kind of healing moment in the drums. So there's that presentational role I think that art can play to make you ask, am I, what's going on here? Why are we treating human beings like this? And how can we undo that and see each other more fully human, and then activate that belief? And then also to fortify, ourselves in this work and allow ourselves to let it down and be human and feel that full human. Because sometimes I think we treat each other in a dehumanizing way because we feel dehumanized.
How is this going to show up in next year's festival?
So I see a really strong Black and Afro-Latin community in New Haven. It is powerful and awesome, and that's been prevalent in the programming since I've come here. And I think that thread will continue. And building on that as foundation, the continued articulation of stories, narrative. And when I say stories and language as well, I mean art, I mean parades, I mean bomba, I mean español, I mean all of those things, kind of coming and without bounds. I don't like being restricted, which is why I think stereotypes make me so angry, because I'm like, get me out of this box, right? So like art is about, to me, a festival, the power of a festival should be about breaking those boxes down. So that's the lens of curation that Malachi and his team use, is like, how can we create moments, experiences, using the city as our stage to break open these boxes, to fortify each other, to find joy, and to co-create. So people should expect to see 5 neighborhood festivals again. That's not going away. That wasn't a one-year thing. 3 weekends on the green for free with all kinds of cultural offerings, and inclusive of people in New Haven who make New Haven their home, and people that live outside of New Haven working in partnership with each other. Performances that hopefully, make some of us feel like super validated, and others maybe be confronted with things that they didn't know they were being confronted with. So, that more of that, I think, is what I'm excited about. And I would really love to see the festival expand even more, in ways that's not about dominating, but in ways that's about uplifting.
Beautiful. Unfortunately, I feel like I could talk to you for another few hours, but we are coming to the end of the show. And as is my habit, I'm going to ask you some closing questions that are a little bit more personal in nature. So let's go with the first one, which is, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, so many different things I could never choose. Advertising, teacher, famous singer. Those were the 3 in most rotation.
Huh.
And doctor. Doctor was another one.
Okay. If you had to describe yourself using 3 words, what would they be?
Joyous, welcoming, alive.
If they made a movie of your life, what would it be about, and which actor would you want to play you?
Oh, Kica. I think it would be like a circle story, because so much of, as I journey through all these different phases of my life, I feel myself kind of going back home in my mind a lot to when I was little, and just like leaning into things that I knew then that I just didn't know what they fully meant. So it'd be all about this like homecoming, but with a real journey. Who would play me? Oof, I don't know. Who do you think would play me?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. I'm not going to let you off the hook. Is there anybody who comes to mind?
I will say, I like Lady Gaga.
Oh, yeah.
I could see that.
Yes, for sure. She's a great actor. Folks, we have come to the end of the show. Thank you so much, Shelley, for joining us today. A big thank you to our fabulous producer, Harry, for once again pulling this all together. To all of you who are listening or on Facebook Live, please do something for the cause of justice today, tomorrow, for the rest of the month and the year. And until the next one, here is wishing you a warm, I think we're at the end of the summer, early fall, and here's hoping for many more days of sunshine.